Tom, I'm sorry. I had no idea you would. This line and an awkward hug. That's how I was welcomed at my home after spending 14 years in a coma. My sister had always been my emergency contact, and she drove me there. My wife Bruna, hopeless that I would ever wake up again, had started a new family. Her husband was exceptionally handsome, way taller and stronger than me, and her daughter was lovely. She clearly had moved on and was happy. I couldn't blame her. We had only been together for 3 years when the invasion happened, and I nearly died. Besides, she always wanted to be a mother, while I wasn't so sure that I wanted kids. At least stay with us in the guest room until you put your life back together, man. The new husband patted my shoulder. It was nobody's fault. If anything, it was my own fault for not dying like the doctors had expected me to. Defeated, I accepted this offer. No one else had space for me in their lives anymore. People mourned me for a while, and then accepted that I was gone. Where I live, it isn't always allowed to simply put people in a coma out of their misery. So, over time, my family moved on like I was permanently gone. Now my parents were old and sick. My baby sister was on her 3rd divorce. And my beautiful wife had apparently found a good man to father the daughter that she dreamed for so long. A man that would wake up during the night to calm her little girl cries and to protect the two of them. All that while I was nothing but a vegetable. One of the worst parts of being in a coma is that I remember being conscious during most parts of it. At least, I remember people coming and talking to me dozens of times for around the first part of it. Bruna would come over every day and tell me about how she missed me, describe how the weather was outside, talk about the snow, the city lights and the smell of pies dreamily. Her attention to details that everyone else seemed to ignore was what I loved the most about her. My sister came regularly too, talking about her day at work and how much she wanted my advice on her life. How much she wished that we could once again turn off our phones and eat junk food watching a bad movie to forget the problems for a few hours. She was my best friend, and her monologues kept me in touch with the everyday life outside in some way. My parents were always teary, reminiscing about my childhood and wishing that one day I would be back to see them get really old. Other people visited me sometimes, like my cousins, aunt, Bruna's parents and friends, but most of them didn't even consider that maybe I was actually listening. The 4 of them sheltered me from the ugly reality, but my best friend and coworker Brant kept me updated about the invasion. How America obviously tried to nuke the aliens, and how their huge failure led to the death of around 80% of their population. How China, Russia, and Iran insisted on this method and suffered the same fate, not without first wiping off Japan, Saudi Arabia, and Argentina, the 3 countries who dared try to negotiate with the invaders, and were deemed as traitors of the mankind. How our country was still safe and mostly intact, and I was one of the few unlucky ones at the wrong place and wrong time. How after this initial carnage, the United Kingdom took the initiative to diplomatically talk with the extraterrestrials, and the other terrified remaining countries followed their lead. How the ETs weren't godlike or didn't have any extreme superpower, but they were undoubtedly better than us. It was like Elon Musk showed up to the Homo habilis today. How the aliens said that they had a duty of protecting the planet itself, and if we wanted our little civilization to keep thriving, we needed to follow their rules. How we readily accepted all their terms, promoting them to world leaders. This species had a shape-shifting power to some extension, so they took a human form and started mixing between us, supervising, monitoring, even making friends and getting married with us. And how the only way to recognize one of them was a small blemish on the wrist, similar to a birthmark or a tattoo. Brant said he was still wary of them, and would always be because of what they did to me. I remember his exact words all those years ago. I suppose we can be on civil terms, but we can never trust their kind. According to Brant, things seem to completely calm down after a while. I can't be sure how long. After that, my best friend focused less on the world news, and more on talking about people that he suspected to be exo-Earthians. I don't know if that's a word that he made up, or if everybody used it. My nurse, his boss, and even a dog. Brant has no idea how important he was to avoid that I completely go insane from being trapped inside a body that refused to function without being wired to machines. I heard him begging to a doctor he believed to be exo-Earthian to fix me, but the doctor simply said that, even if he was from another planet, my body probably couldn't take such advanced alien technology, and that fixing people was in the scope of their mission on Earth. I still remember clearly the day that I almost died, back in 2005. I was an assistant professor on the astronomy department at my local university, and a super Earth had just been discovered, so we were all extremely excited. Around 10 a.m., a pentagonal, bright pink shape showed up in the sky, and then the students became extremely agitated and took to the streets, screaming and trying to throw rocks at the spaceship. I ran outside as well, but to try to calm down the madness and realize that there was a large humanoid shadow looming over us. Its shape was so intriguing that I had to stop and take a peek at it. The best way I can describe him is that it was a crab man. Around 3 meters tall, its pinkish arms were rough, probably made of chitin, and ended in long, strong pincers. Its legs were segmented, arthropod-like, and the head looked like a human wearing a helmet shaped like the main body of a crab. Only the center of its body, torso and groin, was covered in what resembled clothes. It was flying, using some sort of sophisticated jetpack, and holding a somewhat futuristic handgun. Mere moments after I saw this uncanny being, a fight broke out close to me, and as I tried to restrain the crowd, I was shot across the head. I fell, maddening tendinitis running through my skull, and bouncing unbearably on every corner of it. I vaguely recall as, I assume, my students screamed that I was hurt, and that the monster that shot me was escaping. And then I only remember waking up a long time later, noticing that everything hurt and I couldn't scream, gesture, or even blink. I only realized that I was at a hospital when I heard the nurses talking about my current state, and finally understood why there was a perpetual smell of overcleanness around me. Bruna and her new husband, Milo, felt so bad for me that they were extremely kind and generous, taking me to buy new clothes, a phone, and pretty much all the stuff that I would need to restart my life. I was spoiled like they suddenly had adopted a 44-year-old baby. I didn't have any sequels. My brain was completely perfect. It merely refused to work for 1 decade and a half after the bullet was removed. But I was so disoriented in this new world. My last phone was a Motorola V3, and now we suddenly have phones with 4 semi-professional cameras. That's a bit too much for me. Also, I had plenty of medical appointments, especially with nutritionists and physiotherapists. I spent over a decade without eating and walking after all. I let myself be pampered, avoiding traumatic and negative thoughts as much as I could. Hey, please stay with us for as long as you need, buddy. Milo stroked my hair like I was his younger brother. We were wondering, you'll probably want to go back to teaching, right? But feel at home while you figure things out and get back on your feet. There was no animosity, no jealousy. He seemed truly worried about me and sorry for snatching my wife from me. He had a face of a man that didn't even think of me as a rival. Of course not. I was a fragile, poorly aged bag of bones that shouldn't exist. Thanks, man. I managed to offer. And thanks, Bruna. No hard feelings, really. If you were in a coma for that long, I would have probably moved on with my life too. But I wouldn't. I still loved her like crazy, and thinking about her was the only thing that kept my mind going even after the visits had stopped, or at least after I had stopped hearing them. I managed to make it awkward. I realized as she bit her lip uncomfortably, but Milo handled it pretty well. "Oh, hey Ace, I almost forgot. We have a little gift for you." And he extended me a little box wrapped neatly. It felt nice, so I ignored that he talked to me like I was 5. And that's when I noticed the little tattoo-like thing on his wrist. Milo always uses long-sleeve shirts, but this one seemed to be slightly shorter. "What's that on your wrist?" I asked on a neutral tone. He suddenly pulled back from me like I was electrified, and then, realizing how odd his behavior was, he smiled nervously. "No, there's nothing, buddy. It must have been some shadow. Here, take your gift." He handed me the box with his other, non-dominant hand. I think PTSD must have hit me hard, because I started screaming at Bruna. I don't even remember everything I said, but it was along the lines of, "Why didn't you tell me he's not from here? Do you even know anything about this man? He's an invader, Bruna." Milo restrained me, and since I was so weak, I knew better than trying to resist him. "Why does it matter that he's German? Gosh, Tom, I'll call your therapist." I decided not to press the matter. Firstly, because Bruna has always avoided the subject of exo-Earthians, and secondly, because I was, after all, freeloading on the house her parents gave her as a wedding gift. Instead, I decided to talk to the only man who could provide me information about the invasion that almost took my life 14 years ago. Brant was overjoyed to see me, and treated me to any meal and drink from our favorite izakaya downtown that my heart could desire. I took it slow, still relearning how to eat, but I was glad the place was still pretty much the same. We talked excitedly for hours like two teenage boys meeting again after summer break, and I was truly pleased to learn that my best friend was happy, both with his career and with the family he started over the past decade. But I was disappointed to realize that he couldn't provide me with relevant information. "So, Brant, I have to tell you, I could hear you during my coma." "Oh man, really? I'm so glad I told you about every new planet they discovered. I always consulted Professor Everett before I saw you." He smiled. Brant was an engineering teacher, had eidetic memory. He could replicate, word by word, any information someone gave him. "And I'm so glad I got to tranquilize you about your shooter too." "Yeah, about that. Is our current president a crabman?" Brant noisily spilled a large mouthful of beer and laughed. "Is a what?" "A crabman. You know, an exo-Earthian," I repeated, annoyed. And then I realized that maybe it was currently a taboo. "Sorry, is that a forbidden subject now?" "Man, I honestly don't know what you're talking about," Brant replied gravely. He used to be an awful liar, so I decided to believe him. "Okay, so tell me about the day that I was shot." Brant then proceeded to tell me some story about a bank robbery, how some dumb cop out of duty tried to outsmart the criminal, and how I ended up being accidentally shot. Bruna, my sister in the university, was called. Brant dismissed his class and was the first to arrive because he was closer. During the first 2 years, they were ready for me to die at any time, always feeling depressed about my miserable luck. But then everyone started to move on, letting the destiny, or God, or whatever ruled the universe, decide whether I lived or not. A story that I was completely unfamiliar with. So we didn't discover Super Earth K2-18b, and then were invaded by it a few weeks later? Oh, the professor told me about that. We discovered this planet, but it was earlier this year. A feeling of dread started to take over me. To my utter shame, I passed out in the middle of a Japanese bar. I woke up to 2 pairs of identical ocean blue eyes staring at me. "Hey, are you okay? You're so thin. Shut up, go get Dad. No, you go." I'm already here, girls, Brant announced. I seem to be at his home. The 4 eyes belonged to his 2 daughters. What happened now? I asked, terrified that somehow reality had changed again. Or maybe I was still in a coma, hallucinating of being back. You don't remember? You passed out because of a planet. Dad took you home. Said you've had enough of hospitals. Did you know that Mom is a nurse? She asked us to watch you. You snore. Is it true that you slept for 100 years? Now, girls. Uncle Tommy and Dad need to talk. Brant gently shooed them away. I was relieved that my memory wasn't that bad, but I needed to let someone know about the world that I remember, even if I was crazy. So I told him everything exactly as I wrote here. Brant was a great listener, inserting a nod and a right exactly at the proper moment. When I finished, he looked truly concerned. Tom, I really don't know about any alien invasion or crabmen. Honestly, there is a huge chance you had a long coma dream about those. But I believe you believe that this is true. I won't say that you're crazy. He lightly tapped my shoulder. About Bruna and her husband, yeah. I don't think it's good for you to stay with them, alien or not. It'll break your heart. Come stay with us. I promise the girls will let you rest quietly. I accepted Brant's kind offer. I didn't even think of living with him before because, well, imagine a friend you haven't talked to since 2005 suddenly asking to stay at your house. I texted Bruna, letting her know that I was fine and that I would be back by morning, and then I slept at Brant's. It was the most peaceful night I ever had since leaving the hospital. The next day, Brant drove me to pick up my stuff. Bruna asked if she had said something wrong, reaffirming that I would never be a bother to her, and that welcoming me was the least that she could do. Milo was somewhat distant, said his daughter had a fever and excused him to check on her. I'm so sorry, Tom. I'm really sorry everything turned out this way. Bruna was teary. Don't be. You've been good to me, really, I said, although I didn't mean it. I just didn't want to see her cry. After collecting my clothes and the few personal stuff that I had bought myself with Bruna's money in the last couple of days, I went to my new temporary home. Things were fine. Brant's wife was one of the nicest people alive, and the girls didn't actually bother me. In fact, they kept me entertained when I felt lonely, watching Disney movies and asking me who was my favorite The Little Mermaid character. But at night, I felt restless, like something eerie was about to explode within my chest. Something just didn't seem right. On an impulse, I got up and I escaped during dawn. I took an Uber, unable to walk with my reluctant legs all the way there, but I asked him to stop 2 blocks before. After all, there was no reason for anyone to drive during the dead hours of the night on the beautiful upper-middle-class neighborhood, with exuberant, perfectly manicured front lawns. Bruna's house, the house that I happily lived in before I was shot by the crabman, was a single story with large windows. I don't know what I was looking for. I just wanted to muffle the screams inside my head telling me that something was terribly wrong. I cautiously circumvented the house and I approached a room with the lights on. I knew that it wasn't the master bedroom or the guest room, so it was either the spare room, kept unoccupied for when Bruna and Milo had a second baby, or their daughter's room. I moved inch by inch, my back glued to the wall, almost not breathing. It seemed like spending 1/5 of the average lifetime on a vegetative state gives you the ability to move unhurriedly. I let the cool breeze of the dawn calm my nerves a little bit. I missed little things like that. It felt like it took me the whole night to actually approach the window, but I'm sure that I wasn't seen. It happened just a few hours ago, but I know that I'll never be able to forget the scene I saw as I finally peeked inside. Milo was sitting by the bed, patting his daughter's head with a troubled look on his face. His daughter was a miniature crabman.